Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new GenTechPC product showcase. In store for you today we have a long review which is going to be covering in a lot of detail the MSI GT72. We'll actually be covering two different configurations of the GT72 so that you have a little bit more knowledge about the different configuration options that you have. If you're not familiar with this model, this is going to be the 17-inch gaming platform from MSI. This is one of their very high-end gaming models. So we are going to go ahead and start things off with the basic unboxing to show you what to expect inside. We have the outside box we've already stripped away, and now we've gotten to the inside product box. As you can see, compared to the other reviews we've done, the MSI box hasn't changed any. Still the same look. We do have all of the product badges on the bottom that show the brand name products that they have inside of the laptop, and that kind of highlights the high-end hardware. Once we get it open, we're going to see the setup where we have the laptop in the center, and then on the left we have a compartment that holds some of our things. Of those things, the first thing we're going to pull out is going to be the power adapter. So this is going to be how you charge your laptop and how you run off of mains power. We'll get a close-up here so you can see the wattage of this power adapter. Now we'll lift up the center compartment area, and that's going to hold the laptop. It's packaged in a way that we have it covered with a protective sleeve so it doesn't get scratched any, and then the cardboard wings on the sides are what prevent it from getting any kind of crushing or shock damage. Once we have that open, we do see we have another plastic layer on top of it to further prevent any kind of scratches. Just a quick 360-degree look at everything. And then underneath the laptop we have a bag that has all of our product manuals and warranty information. And that actually is all you get in the box. So there's not a very high-end package as far as extras. It just comes with a nice high-end laptop. Okay, as we move along with the review, we're actually going to stop in the BIOS first before we move into the operating system. The BIOS let us show you some of the configuration options that we have as far as BIOS settings and some of the current hardware that we have installed in this configuration. You'll see under the storage information we have both PCI Express SSDs and also SATA SSDs available. Down here we can see that we have 3 out of 4 memory modules installed, 8 GB each, and also, just a heads up, they're DDR4 modules, so we finally moved on from DDR3. Here under Advanced you can turn on the VT-D, which is good for certain virtualization settings. The Intel virtualization is known as VTX, so those are usually good to have turned on if you're going to run virtual machines. Our different boot orders here. Of course, it's standard now to be running UEFI. Legacy is kind of a thing of the past, no pun intended with the name, but you can use it if you need it by coming into the BIOS and turning it on. Now, after the quick tour of the BIOS, we can go ahead and move on to the operating system. So here we go. This is the first look of the GT72 powered up and ready to go. We'll just do a quick tour. We'll start up here on the top of the LCD screen. You do have an HD built-in webcam. The LCD screen is very, very nice on this model. We have several manufacturers' advertisement stickers pasted all over it. The most important one being here in the bottom right-hand corner. It kind of goes over some of the nicer features, like the Generation 3 PCI Express SSDs and the USB 3.1. We'll cover all those cool features as we get deeper into the review. Overall styling is really good. You can see the multicolored RGB LED backlit keyboard. It does have the embedded arrow keys, so the arrow keys kind of stick into the regular typing keyboard and the number pad, when a full-size desktop keyboard might have a little bit more separation. On the left-hand side we have a few hidden buttons that can turn on the laptop, launch certain system features and software. We do have the SteelSeries logo branded right into the laptop as far as who made the keyboard. Lots of different lighting options, and we'll go ahead and actually go over that next. So without a doubt, when you have a laptop like this with a multicolored keyboard, you're going to eventually go in there and take a look at how you can change it up. You do have built-in software here that lets you go in and program all the different color zones, and you can really tweak it up to make it look exactly the way you'd like. The software package is actually quite in-depth, so we're just doing a brief overview, and you can go ahead and take the time to look through that yourself once you get to bring home your GT72. We'll go ahead and move on to another piece of software now. Here is the Dynamic. This is going to be the audio processing software. It's fairly high-end and it has a really intuitive interface here. This is going to give you a lot of different configuration options as far as how audio is processed on your computer. You can make it sound better, you can record it certain ways, and it kind of ties right into where a lot of high-end gaming laptops are going nowadays, which is being not just playing games, but sharing games. As you can see right there in the utility menu, we do have XSplit Gaming Broadcaster built right into the computer as a feature so that you can play and share at the same time. Alright, we've gotten to the point of the review where it's time to go take a really up close and personal look at the interfaces, so that way you know what kind of connectivity you have. We do have an optical drive front and center on the right hand side, so that's the very first thing we have, and it has a dedicated eject button so you don't have to rely on software to open it. Following the optical drive, we have two USB 3.0 ports. Those are the only connections on the right side, so we'll go ahead and move around to the rear now. We have the aluminum LCD lid with the MSI logo on it. You can see the nice brushed aluminum texturing. Zooming in down below where all the connections are, we do have the Kingston lock port on the left, followed by one of the exhaust vents. In the center, this is where we have some of the main connectivity. So for the center interfaces from left to right, we have a mini display port connection. Then we have the MSI branded super port. Next to that is HDMI output, followed by the RJ45 network connection. And then we have our DC port for charging the laptop and running off of mains power. The super port connection is the USB 3.1 type, which is the new USB interface that can't be put in backwards. So both ways the cable will go in. And now we'll move to the left side of the laptop. We have 4 USB 3.0 ports, followed by 4 3.5mm audio connections, and then a card reader. So being that we have 4 audio connections, you have one for microphone in, one for headphone out, one for line in, and one for line out. You'll really appreciate the extra audio connections if you're one of those people who are going to use this laptop as part of a streaming setup, or even if you just want to hook it to some sort of stereo setup so you can play your games on bigger speakers. So that's all the interfaces to cover on the outside as far as connectivity. We'll go ahead and give you a last 360-degree tour of what it looks like with the lid closed, just to give you an idea how the laptop looks and its form factor. This is a fairly thick laptop, as to be expected, because we're in the super high-end range where we're stuffing desktop quality hardware into a laptop chassis. Of course, the actual overall size is only half the story. How much does it weigh is the other half. So the laptop itself is 8 pounds 6 ounces. If we throw in the power adapter as well, we're going to be at 10 pounds and 7 ounces. So that's a decent amount of weight to carry around, but as long as you have it in a capable backpack and support the weight on both shoulders, carrying it around won't be too much of a problem. Now it's time to dig into the device manager and show you the hardware we have installed in this configuration. On this first model, we have the GTX 980 mobile, so we have the very high-end NVIDIA card. We also have the i7 6700HQ CPU. A couple of important things to point out, which I hinted at some of them earlier. We're now running DDR4 RAM for the system memory. As you can see from the product badges on the front of the laptop, we do have killer for both the wired and wireless networking, so high-end branded networking capabilities. The monitor panel is here for you to look up. It is a standard 1920 by 1080p panel running at 60 Hz. However, the quality of the panel is actually very nice, and that's what counts more so than the higher resolutions or higher refresh rates. Another feature you'll be happy to see on this configuration with the GTX 980 mobile is the NVIDIA G-Sync technology. So that's something that the gamers are going to be really happy to see is included. Okay, now that we're done looking over the hardware, looking over the interfaces, we're going to move into some of the benchmarks now. We're going to start with our standard benchmarks. One of these is going to be the noise levels the laptop's producing as far as ambient noise. We're going to see how much noise the cooling system makes under a standard load and then under a heavy load. If you watch our other review videos, you can compare that data to other laptops and see how this laptop stands as far as is it louder or quieter than the average. Now with benchmarks running, the system will start to spool up to get the cooling system working a little bit harder. and you can see the noise levels have gone up accordingly. As always, a word of caution that the sound benchmarks here are a worst case scenario with a microphone right next to the exhaust and a completely quiet room where there's no other ambient noise. You would never actually hear noise levels this loud in a normal usage environment. Okay, and the next test to be run is going to be actually checking out the temperatures of the laptop. What we're looking for here is we're going to be using a touch-free thermometer to see what the heat levels are on the laptop itself on the surface. And we're looking to see that where your hands would be touching the laptop, it stays nice and cool so you don't get the sweaty palm syndrome, and that you are seeing heat come out of the system where it should be. Sometimes the keyboard is an area where heat comes out of the system because it's a nice opening, but predominantly the exhaust system in the back should be sending out lots of heat. The more heat you see coming out of there, the better. That means the system stays cool on the inside. Depending on the internal cooling setup of a laptop, you might see the left and right hand sides result in different temperatures, and that's usually because one fan has more responsibility for the CPU while the other fan has more responsibility for the GPU. And you can load those quite differently depending on the application you're using. We'll actually be doing a disassembly of the unit at the end of the review, and you'll be able to see how these cooling fans are connected to the different internal pieces of hardware. Okay, we finished up all the external benchmarks. Now to move into the performance benchmarks. We ran Firestrike first. We got 8,224 on that. If you'd like to pause the video for a second, you can look at the full CPU-Z and GPU-Z information on the hardware. Over here, we're going to go ahead and move into the thermal temperatures of that benchmark. The CPU only reached mid-60s Celsius load, and the GPU only mid-70s Celsius load. So the cooling system did a really good job keeping everything under control on Firestrike, which is a pretty demanding benchmark. And under the same set of recordings for thermal temperatures, we went and ran 3D Mark 11, our other famous benchmark of choice, a performance score of 10,768 from our current configuration. Okay, now we're going to take you on a small journey from the MSI GT72 to the MSI GT72. The difference here is that we have a small configuration change. We have stepped down to the NVIDIA GTX 970 mobile, so a slightly less complex video card, but we stepped up to the i7 6820 HQ. Now you can see at default the CPU is not that much faster than the other. The big thing to keep in mind is this is an unlocked CPU, enabling full overclocking. So if you're going to be doing a lot of processing, video encoding and such that uses the CPU, you might really want to get yourself the unlocked CPU. The shift mode here, being in sport, automatically put the CPU at a 30% overclock. Now being that we're on a new configuration, we are going to go through some of the same benchmarks again with the sound levels and the heat. That way we can see if there's any changes that are noticeable. And now that we've finished up our benchmarks, Firestrike came in at 6,429. Again, you can pause to take a close look at the CPU-Z and GPU-Z information on the hardware. Moving over to the temperatures, the CPU mid-60s, so exactly identical to what we had before, and the GPU down to a mid-60s temperature. So you can see the GTX 970 mobile is not quite as hot as the 980. That's to be expected because it's not as powerful of a GPU. We'll bring up the 3D Mark 11 score next. Performance score of 9,382. So the scores were great from both laptops. Of course, both of these benchmarks are very heavily GPU driven, so your 980 is going to give you some better results. Next is another sound test, but this one's going to be the speaker system, so we'll let that speak for itself. Alright, thank you for hanging in there with us to the final part of our review where we're going to be doing a minor disassembly for you. We just want to show you what's inside and how to get inside. Now granted, we want to make sure we point out that you do have to void your warranty to go inside of the laptop. And that brings out a really important piece of information to share. You can upgrade your laptop when it's brand new without breaking the warranty if you choose to have the upgrades done by us during your checkout process. If you're into self-upgrades, that's fine. That would be something you should do probably after your warranty has run out. So to get inside, we'll take those 7 screws out along the perimeter and in the center, and we just lift the entire bottom cover off. Now let's go ahead and zoom in and take a closer look around. We'll go to the center area. We'll see some of our system RAM is available there. Here we have the heat pipe system going to the cooling fans in the corners. Our mass storage device on the left-hand side, which is a 2.5-inch mechanical hard drive. Down below that, this is our SSDs. So just a small word of caution about the SSDs. They might look identical because they're all in the M2 form factor, but we're using different buses here. We have the SATA bus and the PCI Express bus. It's just a couple of screws to lift up the breakout module, and now you can get a better idea of what we're talking about. On the left-hand side here, the M2 SATA SSD is using the SATA interface. Right next to it is a PCI Express interface. If we flip over the module, we actually get 2 more of the same. Any of the new GT72 models will be able to run all 4 of those SSDs, but only the higher chipset can actually do the Super RAID and put the PCI Express in a RAID setup. And here's a quick close-up of one of the 8GB DDR4 RAM modules. Taking that out of the center of the motherboard there. Also, now we've removed the entire cooling system here, so you can see how that was all connected together. Our cooling fans have been removed, and that exposes the video card. We just wanted to show you that it is using an MXM slot, so the video card can be removed and therefore possibly upgraded. And that, everybody, actually does bring our review down to a close. We hope that you found the GT72 video educational and entertaining. It was able to answer the questions you might have had about the system. Of course, if you'd like to have more information about this model, just visit our website, GenTechPC.com, and go to the product page. We'll have those links in the description down below. The product page will, of course, have the current pricing and availability and all the full product specifications. Now, if you still have some questions after the video, feel free to ask them here on YouTube and we can answer it for you and everybody else. Or if you would like some one-on-one help, then feel free to contact us by phone or email. So we just want to remind everybody once again, this was GenTechPC, and we'll see you next time.